I never thought the sound of a key turning in my apartment door would send shivers down my spine. But that night, it did. The creak of the knob echoed like a cruel reminder that my world was about to collapse. I froze in the middle of the living room, my chest tight, the air thick with dread. And then he walked in. My stepdad. The man who raised me, betrayed me, and discarded me like I was nothing. But he wasn't alone. Behind him trailed a woman, giggling, her arm wrapped around his like she owned the place. My apartment. My safe space. For a second, I thought maybe I was dreaming. But the smug look on his face told me otherwise. He acted like this was normal, like he had every right to move into my home without warning, without asking, without even acknowledging the pain he left behind in my life. I clenched my fists, trying not to shake. I could still hear his words from years ago, sharp as broken glass. You'll never make it on your own. You're weak. You're nothing without me. But what he didn't know was that I had been waiting for this moment. I had a plan. And the man who thought he had destroyed me was about to realize just how dangerous it is to underestimate a broken girl who's learned how to stand on her own. This was the beginning of my revenge. To understand why his sudden reappearance shattered me, you have to know the story behind us. My stepdad entered my life when I was 12, after my mom remarried. At first, I thought he was going to be the father figure I'd always dreamed of. He brought flowers for my mom, told me he wanted to be there for me, and pretended to care about the little things, like how I loved to draw or how I hated thunderstorms. But that perfect act didn't last long. Once he settled in, the kindness slipped away. He wasn't violent, not in the way most people imagine, but he broke me down with words, with looks, with constant reminders that I wasn't good enough. He'd sneer at my grades, criticize my clothes, and tell me I'd never survive without him and my mom. And the worst part? My mom believed him. She started echoing his insults, doubting me, siding with him every single time. Slowly, my home stopped being a place of safety. It became a prison where I was constantly reminded of my flaws. By the time I turned 18, I couldn't take it anymore. I packed my bags and left with nothing but a few clothes, a second-hand laptop, and a heart full of cracks. I struggled. I starved some days, but I survived. I built myself piece by piece, proving him wrong with every job I took, every bill I paid. That apartment? It was more than just walls and furniture. It was proof that I could stand on my own. And now, he had invaded it. When I first left home, I carried so much pain with me that it felt like my chest might collapse under the weight. Nights were the hardest. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling of whatever tiny room I was renting, wondering if maybe he was right, maybe I was weak, maybe I really couldn't make it. There were days when I didn't eat, days when the electricity got cut off, nights when I cried myself to sleep on a mattress lying flat on the floor. I felt invisible, forgotten, unwanted. No one checked on me. No one cared if I was okay. I was just a girl trying to hold her broken pieces together in silence. But slowly, I started to stitch myself back up. I got 2 jobs, one at a cafe during the day and another cleaning offices at night. Every paycheck, no matter how small, felt like a little victory against his voice in my head. I saved, I hustled, I sacrificed. And eventually, I signed the lease on my first apartment. It wasn't fancy, peeling paint, a squeaky door, thin walls, but it was mine. For the first time in my life, I had a place where no one could tell me I wasn't enough. I used to sit by the window at night, looking at the city lights, whispering to myself, "You made it. You did this." That apartment was my sanctuary. and that's what made his arrival feel like a knife straight through my heart. The first night they stayed, I barely slept. Every laugh, every whisper from the other room clawed at my nerves. It felt like my sanctuary had been poisoned. I wanted to scream, to throw them out, but instead I lay in bed with tears burning my eyes, asking myself the same question over and over. Why here? Why me? The next morning, he acted like nothing was wrong. He strolled into the kitchen, opened my fridge, and started eating my food. His new wife, young, glamorous, dripping with jewelry, looked me up and down like I was some pathetic stray. She smirked, like she already knew the story he must have told her about me. The failure daughter who never amounted to anything. I tried to reason with him. I told him this was my apartment, my safe space, and they couldn't just waltz in like they owned it. But he laughed, that same cold laugh I remembered from years ago. He said the lease was under my mom's name, that technically I had no right to keep him out. And the worst part, he wasn't lying. My mom had co-signed it when I couldn't qualify on my own. Panic washed over me. He could actually stay. He could take over the only home I had built for myself. And every time I opened my mouth to fight back, his words cut me down. You'll never win against me. You never did. But he had no idea I wasn't that scared little girl anymore. I knew then that if I tried to fight him with anger, I'd lose. That's what he expected, for me to scream, break down, or give up. But I wasn't going to give him that satisfaction. I was going to be smarter. So, I played along. I smiled when his wife bragged about her designer handbags, nodded when he barked orders as if I were some kind of maid in my own home. I let them think they had won. But behind the silence, I was working. Every night, when they went to bed, I pulled out my laptop. I gathered documents, emails, and bank records I still had access to from the time he controlled my mom's finances. My mom might have turned her back on me, but she had never changed her passwords. And what I found made my hands shake with both fear and excitement. Hidden accounts, unpaid taxes, shady transactions. He wasn't the untouchable man he pretended to be. The next step was almost too easy. I called a lawyer, presented the evidence, and watched the pieces fall into place like dominoes. Debt collectors started calling, letters from the IRS piled up, and his picture-perfect life began to crumble right in front of me. He had walked into my apartment thinking he had all the power. What he didn't know was that the girl he once broke down had built herself into someone stronger, sharper, and far more dangerous. This was my revenge. The day it all came crashing down was one I'll never forget. I came home from work to find him pacing the living room, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. His new wife sat on the couch, mascara streaked down her cheeks, clutching a half-packed suitcase. The letters on the table told the story. Frozen accounts, overdue debts, legal notices stacked like bricks of justice. The walls of arrogance he had built around himself were collapsing, and he couldn't stop it. For once, he wasn't the one in control, I was. He looked at me then, eyes wild with desperation, searching for the fear he used to see in me. But it wasn't there anymore. Instead, I stood tall, calm, almost serene. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to say a word. My silence was enough. Within a week, they were gone. He left the apartment in shambles, but I didn't care. It was mine again. My sanctuary, my proof of survival. I scrubbed the walls, replaced the locks, and breathed in the air of freedom like it was the sweetest perfume. That night, sitting by the window, I whispered the same words I had the first night I moved in. You made it. You did this. Only this time, it wasn't just survival. It was victory. For years, he tried to convince me I was nothing. But now, standing in the glow of my reclaimed home, I knew the truth. I was everything he could never be.